Welcome to Romera Records Virtual Cast. Today we have on Jen. How's it going?
It's going really good. Sun's shining, and I woke up on this side of the ground, so all is well.
Awesome. And are you in California?
I am not. I am in Victoria, BC, which is on the west coast of Canada, so just above California.
Okay. Um, so I found you from Podmatch. Basically, I was interested in what you do and figured I'd match with you. So I guess start with, who you are, what you do, and then and like how you got started.
Absolutely. So I am Jen Paterson. I am a money coach for entrepreneurs. I work primarily with women and I teach them how to manage the financial side of their business, everything from how to set up bank accounts, managing cash flow, paying themselves, setting up their business for future growth, bookkeeping, all of that stuff that we're all expected to know as, humans and business owners, but nobody actually teaches or talks about. So, it's one of those things. I got into it because I was a financial advisor in a former lifetime, and I kept coming across the same scenario over and over and over again. I'd come across a business owner who loved what they did, was amazing at what they did, had no problem, bringing in clients and revenue, and yet we're still living hand to mouth, feast or famine, and there was no stability to their financial life. And there was no reason for them not to have stability in their financial life. And it always came down to the fact that they just didn't know what to do. They needed someone to just show them the ropes. And so that's kind of how I ended up doing what I'm doing. And I love it.
So something that always intrigues me about people who are like coaches and everything is like you usually people who are in like the same career field as you as like a coach or whatever, they all have the same like purpose, but everybody has different techniques. Like everybody has their different way of coaching. What would you say is something that makes you unique or not really from everybody, but just something that you're like, this is what I'm good at. Like this is how I can help you because I do this very well.
I think the thing that makes me different or unique or sort of special and why I'm good at what I do is I understand the nuance of when it comes to finances, there's no one size fits all. There is no, this is the way you do it right, because everybody's different. Everyone's brain works differently. Everybody has different needs in their life. Everyone has different desires. The things that I want from my life are probably different from the things that you want from your life. And every listener listening, they want different things from their life. And so the way that they set up their finances has to reflect that. And so I find with a lot of the financial gurus and the books and the programs is it's do this method and you will be successful. And that's not always the case. Sometimes you need to tailor it to the person, to the business, to their life, to their goals. And so that's something that I have spent a lot of years working on and being able to teach that to people and also finding a way to make it accessible. I find with a lot of finance, they use a lot of jargon. They make it really seem really hard and complicated when it doesn't have to be. Money can actually be very simple if you know what you're doing and can set it up in that way rather than making it seem really hard and complicated and unaccessible to people who aren't financially minded, aren't big on spreadsheet, aren't type A, they have to deal with it too. So like we have to make it accessible for them.
Yeah, something I realized from a young age was that life is simple, but people are difficult. And if you
Yes.
understand that, then you'll be able to navigate around the people that you involve into your life because the simpler you want your life to be, you need to find people who are going to have that same type of attitude, that same type of personality. So as you said, everybody's different. So if you want to help somebody who has a certain lifestyle, whether it's like this person always loves fancy things, right? So they love a nice car, nice house, nice clothes, stuff like that. Okay, like let's section off your money to be able to afford those things, but now realize that you need to sacrifice in these other areas because you're spending so much money on these other things. So, how difficult is that to get people to understand their lifestyle? Like, I know a lot of times when we do these self audits where we understand who we are, it can be kind of shocking to some people. Like it's kind of like the person who never steps on the scale, then the one day they step on the scale, like I weigh that much. So it's like, how difficult is it to get people to understand who they truly are?
In all honesty, it's actually not that hard because most people, when they are ready for financial coaching, they understand that something's got to change and something's got to give, and they're just looking for some guidance on how to go about it and not waste their time trying out a bunch of different things that may or may not end up working. So, usually that self-reflection part kind of happens before they come to me, but at the same time, like there's always the resistance. And most of the time, the resistance is subconscious. They not even be aware that they're resisting the change and why they're resisting the change. So, you know, on the surface, it's not terribly hard to get people to kind of come around to we have decisions to make. And yes, if I'm not here to yuck anyone's yum. So if shoes are your thing, great. Let's put aside money for shoes. Fabulous. But you're right. You have to make those sacrifices elsewhere. And let's figure out intentionally where you're going to make those sacrifices in other parts of your life. And people are really, really okay with that for the most part. The issue that comes with it is when it goes to implementation and there's something holding them back. And so the difficult part comes when you're starting to dig through their money history, their story. Maybe there's some past traumas, maybe not even traumas, but just like some money stories that they're telling themselves or subconscious beliefs. That's when you have to start really digging, and it can get a little bit difficult if somebody is really resistant and then you find the aha moment and it's nothing you expect. It's so funny because I had one person that I was working with, and she was really, really slow to implement the changes. And then I suggested that she switch banks. I said, this bank that you're at is not serving you. It's not setting you up for success. Like, let's look around and see what else is out there. And the minute she swapped to a different bank, the floodgates opened and it was amazing. And everything flowed from that point on. And it was literally just because she had all of this baggage around this bank that she'd been at since she was a teenager, making that seemingly insignificant change really was what was holding her back. And if you had said to me at the beginning of our coaching session, the key to working with this person is changing banks, I would have been like, that's very strange and bizarre. But that really was the case. And that is where the challenge comes in, is finding those little nuances with everybody. Like you said, life is simple, but people are not.
Yeah. I mean, what you're doing is borderline financial therapy. It's just like people
Yeah.
understand, like, hey, I have a problem. I need to talk to somebody about it. And then once they get in there, that's when it's like, okay, like what sacrifices am I about to make? What changes am I about to make? Am I okay with this? Can I do this? And once they kind of grasp you kind of have to build their trust. Once you build their trust, then they can grasp what you're trying to get through to them. They can grasp, okay, if I make this change, this is how I'm going to benefit. So this person, they change banks. All right. Huge change for some people. Like, oh my God, I've always banked with these people. These are the bank I always trust. But let's make this change. Oh wow, changed my life. So sometimes people don't really see the end result, but if they know that they can trust you, they've built this relationship with you, built some rapport with you, they can see that whatever you're telling them is going to make a change in their life and for the better, because that's what your job is. That's what you're trying to do, is help them.
Absolutely. And a lot of times, I always come at it from a place of teamwork. Like, we're here together to work this out together. I can't do the work for you, but I can be there to hold your hand and guide you and support you while you do the work. And you're right. I mean, sometimes a lot of my job comes down to a little bit of therapy. And, I sort of wish when I could go back into my university days and say, like, take some psychology classes. They will serve you well as an adult. Because, I find in the work that I do, you'll talk a lot about financial strategy, and there's a lot of resources out there on financial strategy, but that only gets you so far, because if your mindset and, isn't on board with making these changes, then you will find ways to self-sabotage, whether it's consciously or not. And so half of the work that I do, or even sometimes more than half of the work that I do, is working through that mindset stuff with my clients and, going back into their financial history, and talking about like the earliest money memories they have of how were they raised on money? What did their parents talk about money? How did they feel when they first started having money within their control, and what did that look like? And it's really interesting how those same patterns show up over and over and over again in our adulthood that were really our forming life events when we were kids, and they show up over and over again in varying different ways, and sometimes it can be a little hard to pinpoint if you're not looking at it from a bird's eye view, but once you really take a look at the whole picture, it's very obvious a lot of times.
So you said you mainly help women. What is it that made you, I mean, you being a woman, what made you want to specifically help that? Is it just, hey, I'm a woman, I've been through these situations, I know it'd be easy to help other women in their situations, or is it just like I just don't I don't feel like dealing with men, or is it what what got you there?
That's a fair question. So the reason I focus on women is I've walked the walk, I talk the talk. I've experienced life as a woman, and I understand a lot of the things that hold women up. The other thing that really drove me to work with women is a lot of the financial advice in the world for women is a, a little bit condescending. And it's tends to be, let's talk about how to curb your shopping habits and couponing and budgeting. And it's not about long-term wealth building. It's not about investing. It's not about how to really make yourself wealthy. It's about how to cut. And if you look at, anything on frivolous spending, it's always feminine based things. They'll talk about shoes and lattes and purses. No one ever mentions golf clubs like when they're talking about frivolous spending, but that could easily fall under the same category, but it's just not talked about. So, I find that a lot of times women get the short end of the stick. And so part of what I want to do is bring women up to have these conversations, to feel excited to talk about money and talk about investing and to talk about building long-term sustainable wealth rather than just figuring out, a better way to budget.
And I don't know why, but I do feel some kind of way about like how females are portrayed, like on Facebook. Like I was posting, there aren't enough female like just leaders in the forefront as far as like role models. That was the word I was trying to use. Like female role models that I'm not saying that there aren't any good ones. What I was saying is like the media isn't pushing enough females as role models. Like they're always using men as like, oh, this ideal person. Like, I'm sure there's like certain magazines, but like everybody knows GQ. It's like the good
Hmm.
looking guys are on there, but it's like, where's the magazine where we talk about the female business leaders? Like there are
Yeah.
very few ways where females are portrayed as like financially stable and able to provide as the female head of the household. It's like there are plenty of females out there doing that. This is not that hard, guys.
No, no, and there's some really amazing women out there doing really fabulous things that should be featured in those articles, but at the same time, somehow we always end up being the punchline and the joke, as opposed to the headline, on the front of the magazine cover. And so, that it's ridiculous. Like it's absolutely ridiculous because there are these people out there, and I think that it's one of those, the more the merrier. Like there isn't, a list of people that you have to, I'm trying to get the right words out. There's no cap on success, right? Like there's plenty of room at the top for all of us. And so I think the more role models, the more women that are seen as successful, the more the younger generations are going to be motivated and encouraged to seek out those things for themselves. And the more we feature those women, the better off all of women will be, because those messages in society will start to change and people will start to take women more seriously.
Yeah, I mean, even in like pop culture, I would say, for men, most of the role models, if you're like 18 and younger, is like an athlete or a musician. Like that's who you're looking up to. Like everybody back in the day, rock star, like that word was born because like rock was in the height of like popularity when we had news and articles and digital media. Everybody wanted to be a rock star. And then now, like I think hip hop and rap is starting to be that. So people are starting to look toward them. And then athletes from forever ago. Like everybody looked up to gladiators and whatnot.
Yep.
So for the male side, that's been them, and then for the female side, it's always been like supermodels, and like
Mhm.
now it's like Instagram, where it's like Kim Kardashian and all these other females like that. But it's never like the business owner, or that's what people are looking up to as a
Yeah.
female role model. So, and do you know the story of Elizabeth Holmes?
Elizabeth Holmes. The name rings a bell, but
She was
I
the
can't quite
dang, what was the name of her company? I forgot the name of her company, but Theranos. So she created a company where I think it was like if you prick your finger, it was going to test your blood, and it was like within a super short amount of time compared to what the technology we actually have now. And they give you like your test results, maybe like blood sugar, um, blood oxygen. I don't know. It was just like a bunch of different stuff that we just literally do not have that technology right now. Well, she created a company and they said that they could do that. But the problem was is that they lied. They didn't have the technology. They were faking it and telling investors that they were able to do it. And she had
Mhm.
this multi-billion dollar company and they were just getting this money from investors. But the problem was they got found out and she just went to jail like sometime last year and she's going to be in there for I think like 7 years or something like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so but anyways, my point was she could have been a phenomenal role model because she like went to I think Stanford or something like that and then graduated and then started this company when she was like 20 something, like 22 or 23, something like that. She was super young. Creates his multi-billion dollar company, but turns out to be a fraud. And I'm
Mhm.
like, that could have been, a great scientific, smart woman who was able to create something, but something happened. So I hate that stories like that end up happening. But females, there are still plenty of them out there who are able to have accruing tons of money and that can be powerful in the workforce that people can have to look up to. So
Yeah, and it's interesting because, a story like that, is very prevalent in the news. Whereas there are male entrepreneurs doing that every day,
yes.
right? And it's just like, oh, okay, well, that's just dudes, right? And the same thing goes along with like getting funding or things like that. It's so much harder for women to go out and get like VC funding, angel investor funding, and create those businesses. And we're deterred from using debt to grow businesses. Whereas when a man does it, it's not debt, it's leverage. So, all of these double standards that just hold us back. And it's ridiculous that it's still the case.
Yeah,
I have literally no other words on it. Like, it's insane.
it's pretty sad, but I think that times obviously are always changing. We're obviously getting more exposure to what other people can do and how they can advance. But I think that definitely people like you who are coaching and helping women in that demographic be more aware of how they can be more offensive instead of defensive with their money is something that's step one. You know what I mean? Like that is how we get to a more diverse economy and able to promote financial readiness and financial stability amongst different kinds of people. So definitely commend you for doing what you're doing. I was just curious about the question because I don't know if it is difficult for a female to help a male work on his finances, and men might be like, who are you to tell me how I'm gonna use my you know
I'm
what I mean?
not gonna lie, that has happened.
All right, there you go.
it has been a part of my story, and I have definitely, had experiences where, I've had men be like, well, because I started really young. I started working as a financial advisor directly at a university, and, I was very qualified. I'd been, managing investments and finances since I was 18 years old. I knew what I was talking about. And yet I'd walk up to the door and people would look at me and, I feel like they want to pat me on the head and give me a cookie. And some I have worked with great men in my career. I've had clients who've been men who have been amazing and see me for the professional that I am and don't question me, when I talk to them or teach them or advise them. And I've also had men who don't
Yeah.
respect me in that way. And so it is what it is. And I've sort of learned that for my own mental health, I will happily work with men if they are coming to me and saying, I want your help. Absolutely. More than happy, but I'm not going to chase anyone down and convince them to work with me. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes complete sense. Um, so what would you say is maybe your biggest struggle when it comes to helping people? And it might just be understanding, who the person is, or understanding, why they spend their money in the way that they do. Like, what would you say is your biggest struggle?
I think the biggest struggle comes from people just not wanting to talk about money at all.
Mm,
Um, there's a lot of shame around money because of that lack of education. We all just think, and I think social media really feeds into that because you see on social media what people want you to see. They're not going to show you what's actually happening in their bank accounts. So, especially in the entrepreneurial world and the coaching world, people will talk about, oh, I'm making 10K months. I had, my first 100K year. I'm making seven figures. And yes, that may be the truth to the letter, but what are the underlying circumstances? How much are you spending to earn that 100K? What are the actual details of the situation that you don't see? And so people feel really ashamed when they're not reading those milestones, even though they could be if they wanted to spend $30,000 to earn that 10K. I mean, that's realistic. It's a way to do it. It's not a great way to do it, but you can do that. And so because they feel the shame, then they don't want to speak up. They just want to sort of hide and, oh, well, I'm just going to be over here and I'm going to play in my little sandbox and I'm just going to not talk to anyone about it and hopefully it'll all work itself out in the end. Sticking your head in the sand is not a great strategy, but it's what a lot of people do. And so a lot of what I do in my practice is conversations like this, like you and I are having, to help people realize that talking about money is important and being able to have these conversations within your own business, but also with your community. And the more we talk about money, the more we're all going to help each other rise. And that's one of the reasons why I do a lot of podcasts interviews is because I want to get the conversation going. I want to give people permission to talk about money with their friends, with their community, with their peers, and not feel ashamed because we're all dealing with it. Some people are a little further down the road. That's fine. In every other walk of life, we have no problems sharing the intimate details, but somehow when it comes to money, we all clam up and get uncomfortable.
So the females that you help, is it usually just like their own money, or is it they're coming to you to talk about like their families spending?
It can be both. Usually the ones that I'm working with, I'm talking to business owners. So we're working with like the cash flow within their business. But I have a lot of clients that will apply the principles that we work with within their business to their personal and family finances because it works.
Mm.
Because what I teach is so effective. They're like, oh, why am I not doing this at home when I'm doing it at work? And it's working so well at work and then it works at home too. And it's the way that I've been managing my finances in my personal life for decades now, and it is very, very effective. And so while I do sort of advertise that I work with entrepreneurs with business stuff, it does translate very nicely into personal as well.
Yeah, that's something that I think a lot of people need to really understand. Like if you own a business and your money is being allocated in certain ways and you're tracking it, it's like why aren't you doing the same thing in your personal life? Like if you know that that works and that's making you money, putting you in the green, but personally you're like, oh man, I'm going to pay my bills this week. It's like, well, just use the same principles that you're using with your business, so that way you'll know like, oh, I can allocate this much money here, move that there, and then I'm going to be profitable in my personal space. And I could see how some people would struggle with that just because like when you have a business, it's so much work that you kind of want to just play when you're like at home. Like I had a
Yes.
podcast with I think her name was Victoria. I forgot her last name, but she told me that. She was like, I've been CEO of all these companies and I do this, and when I come home, like I just want to play. Like I don't want to be in work mode anymore. And I was
Mhm.
like, yeah, that that seems like that would be something that you want to just turn that light switch off.
Absolutely. It's the same principle as the carpenter's house is never finished, right? When you do something all day long, you don't want to come home and do it some more. And, that's one of the reasons why I'm a big believer in like quick and efficient methods rather than complicated spreadsheets that take you hours to track every penny and, make sure that it's all functioning perfectly. Especially like when I became a mom, like that changed the game completely because I used to be one of those complicated spreadsheets kind of people because I loved it because that's just who I am. And then my daughter was born. It was like, "Mm, that's not feasible anymore. It's not going to happen. I can't keep up with it." And so, you know, things that I teach are not only effective, but they're got to be fast. It's got to be something that you can do very, very quickly because most of the people that I'm working with, they're not only business owners, they're parents. Some of them have multiple businesses. I myself have 3 different businesses that I manage. And so like time is of the essence. And if I am wasting it, then I am not being successful and something's going to fall through the cracks. So, that's one of the big principles of what I teach is not only effective, but efficient.
So who would be your ideal person to work with, like your ideal client?
Ideal client, I work a lot with creative business owners. I love working with creative business owners. I used to be a dancer. I understand that lifestyle, that mentality of, they don't want to look at something difficult and complicated and a lot of math. That's not their jam. So, my ideal client is somebody who loves what they do, loves their clients, loves their business, and just needs a financial system that works. They've been in business for enough time that they are making revenue, clients are rolling in, like that's not the struggle. A lot of times people will misconstrue what I do with like business coaching. So I'm not going to help you make the money, I'm going to help you manage the money. And so someone who's been in business long enough that they're making money and now they're wanting to pay themselves a steady salary, they're wanting to, get rid of the seasonal roller coaster that they've experienced up until now with business ownership, and they want to just stabilize and grow their business in a really effective way, and they want to start putting more dollars into their bank account.
Yeah, that's like something that you just talked about with the difference between like helping somebody make money and helping somebody manage money. I think those kind of get misconstrued, kind of like a personal trainer. Some like every time somebody meets a personal trainer, because this has happened to me, I used to be a personal trainer. People be like, "Man, I hurt my wrist. Like, what should I do for my wrist?" And I'm just like, "I'm not a doctor. Like, this is
Go
not
see
the
a
thing."
physiotherapist.
Yeah. Like, what are you asking me right now? So yeah, people might come to you and be like, I'm not making enough money. How do I increase my revenue? It's like, that's not what I did.
Yeah. I've got some great business coaches that I will happily point you towards. But, and it's funny because like a lot of what I do can lead to increased revenue because I can teach people how to be really intentional with how they invest their money in their business. And so that quite often will lead to more revenue. But in terms of like business coaching and bringing in clients, that is not my jam. Please don't ask me to help you with that because I will not be helpful.
Yeah. I do think that when people are able to understand their situation, as we were talking about, like their self audit, understand, where they're at, their status, it definitely helps them understand like how to ask better questions because if they're working with you, they're first off, they're probably going to get more clarity into like their lifestyle and what's going on so that they can ask you the questions that are going to help them because if they aren't aware of those things, then they might just be all over the place. They might not be asking the right questions, and it might make your job more difficult that you have to kind of pry out the right things. But yeah, I mean, what you're doing is probably helping people just elevate and accelerate, the places that they need to go to be more successful, so that they can allocate their money properly.
Allocate their money and also all their other resources, right? Like, because we obviously have our financial resources, but we also have like our mental capacity, our time. Those are also really, really important and can either lead to success or send you down a path of chaos. And so, it's not just about managing the finances, but when the finances are in order, you can take more time to make sure those other resources aren't being wasted. And, I find like financial stress is something we all understand. We've all felt financial stress. You can't live in our society without feeling financial stress at some point in your life. Everyone's is going to look a little different, but we all understand financial stress. And when you can alleviate the financial stress, the amount that opens up is truly remarkable. I've seen some very incredible transformations in my clients of what they're able to accomplish with those other very important resources when the money is taken care of.
Do you have like a step plan, or you just kind of like so you're shaking your head, yes.
Yes, I do.
So what are like these steps and what's the timeline?
It really depends on the client, in terms of a timeline, but in terms of step, like, I always start with like, we do what I call a midi audit, and so we just start tracking the money. We just start looking at what's going in, what's coming out, and even just taking that step is so much I love it so much because the aha moments that come out of that are so hilarious. I had one client that came back to me and she said, "Oh my gosh, I found someone who I have been working for the last 9 months who I've never invoiced. I forgot." That is insane. Yeah, right? Like, that's the face I always get when I tell this story. Like, 9 straight months without invoicing this client. So obviously that led to a whole slew of other issues of, do I go back to them? What do I do? How do I handle this? And so just that little step of taking that mini audit of, tracking what's coming in and going out. And it's not even going backwards and looking what you've done because that can get really, really like intense and you can get sucked down a rabbit hole doing that. Just starting at day one and moving forward and seeing what's going on. You find subscriptions that you forgot about. You find, old credit cards that maybe you closed but forgot to pay out the last remaining balance. Like all of these little details that start to show up and you're like, what a black hole. Like this is just money down the drain. And so you find those things. And then once we kind of have a sense of what's going on and plugging some of those black holes initially, then we start to figure out, okay, like where are we going with this? And what I have all of my clients set up is what I call the bank account architecture. So using a bank account architecture, it's not just one account where everything's mixed and mingled, it's multiple accounts, all with different jobs to do. So you have a separate bank account that's just holding your tax dollars. You've got a separate bank account that's just holding your emergency fund. You've got another one where your operating expenses go from. And so what that does is it alleviates the need for either a program or a spreadsheet or trying to keep it all up in your head of what each dollar is meant to do. Because as a business owner, we know that our dollars have a lot more jobs to do than somebody who works a 9 to 5. Because someone who works a 9 to 5, they've got to pay their bills and that's about it, and live on it. Whereas as an entrepreneur and a business owner, that dollar has so much more work to do. It's got to pay for your business operating expenses. You got to pay salaries of your employees. You got to make sure your taxes are covered. You got to make sure you have a paycheck from your business. You have to cover emergencies, all of these things that the money has to do. So separating them out into multiple accounts allows you to see it in black and white in seconds of exactly where you stand. And when you go to spend money in the business, it's not a matter of, oh, hang on, I got payroll next week and income tax time is coming. How much am I going to owe on that? I don't know. It takes the guesswork out. You just look at the operating expense account, the mother's there or it's not. The decision is made for you, and it just makes it so much easier. And then once that's set up, the rest of it just flows. And we talk about like how to allocate your dollars intentionally so that they're serving you. And we talk about how to maintain the system and alter it and tweak it over time, because a system like this is really flexible. I run, like I said, three different businesses, all wildly different. One is an Airbnb, one is a product-based foods business, and I have my coaching practice. And they all have architectures, and they're all completely different from one another because obviously those businesses have different needs. And, the architecture that I have now in my coaching practice is also wildly different from the one I had 10 years ago. And so that's the thing I love about it is it's flexible and it allows for that customization of where your business is at, where you are at, and what you need at that moment. And you can always edit it and change it as things need changing. And working within that, I find that my clients, when they have that snapshot, that picture of their financial stance, they're like, oh, well, I know exactly where I am and I know exactly where I want to go. And now I see the path of how I want to get there. And it really does take away that stress and open up the door. And it's something, beyond that, using the architecture, you can set up those steady, predictable paychecks, that financial stability. Like that is what it allows you to do.
So going along that story that you told about the forgetting to pay somebody, that or forgetting to invoice them, like that to me says that they probably have an issue with doing too much, because if that was the only thing you had to do, you would remember that. But
Mhm.
this person probably does too much. How often do you get those kind of people who are just doing everything themselves and they're not really delegating any tasks to other people to help manage, their lifestyle?
Every single day. Every single day I deal with that. And it's honestly, I can say that it's something that I deal with as well because I I was raised to think if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. Um so I find it really hard to delegate. I remember the first time my husband and I hired a cleaner to come in and make sure that our house wasn't chaos. I had anxiety about it because I thought, well, they're not going to do it the way that I like it. And it was ridiculous. And after they came in and cleaned the house and it was beautiful and shiny and I didn't have to do anything for it, I quickly changed my tune on that one. But it is something that happens over and over and over again. And, this is one of the reasons why that is so prevalent is because they're so busy dealing with all of the things, and especially solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, they're trying to get their businesses off the ground and they feel like delegating or eliminating is really hard and they can't do it and they're going to let someone down if they try. And so things fall through the cracks and it's so easy for it to happen. And so when you can create the clarity within the finances, again, it opens up the mental capacity to go, okay, now that I've got that sorted, let's look at the rest of my business and see if I can apply some of those same principles and create more space. Or let's look at the finances and see if I can invest in a VA or an automation program or someone to just set some systems up for me in the short term. And knowing that they've got the money to pay for that stuff really makes it a lot easier to feel comfortable doing it because they know that they're not going to screw over their business or themselves by investing in this help.
Yeah, I think there's some crazy stat that like 60% of businesses fail within like the first year or something like that.
I'm
So
pretty sure it's more than that. Like
yeah,
it's
probably.
it's an insane number of how many businesses fail. Like it really is. And some of them it's just the idea is not good and that's that. But I think a lot of it really comes down to mismanagement and not understanding how to grow a business.
Yeah, and that's what I was leading to with the statements that you were just making is like people probably just want to do everything themselves when they first start this new company and they don't have enough help and they can't afford to pay help. So they're doing everything themselves and then it just like crashes and burns. To give people a analogy to that, Go to a restaurant late at night before they're about to close when like there's no staff there. That and like order a huge amount of food or something like that. That's what it's like watching a solopreneur, as you said, work, is because they're doing way more than what they have available to assist. And it's just unmanageable. And their clients become maybe frustrated at the product or service that they're delivering, and they're unable to be the company that they want to be. They're unable to deliver the way that they want to deliver, and so they struggle. And that's probably why a lot of companies fail. And if it's not really just the management of money, is that they're almost just getting in their own way to be
Mhm.
successful. So what you're doing is probably helping them be like, hey, you've got a little bit of extra money, or you're not making that much money because you are doing all these other things. How about you just hire somebody like you did, to clean your house? So that just freed up so much time on your plate to get all that other crap that you haven't been doing done.
Yeah, and the other thing that I always talk about with my clients is, let's talk about the overall cost of hiring help. I get it at the beginning, you literally have $0 and that's fine, and you need to like bootstrap things to get it off the ground. But once you're past that phase, there comes a point where it actually costs you to not hire because your time becomes very, very valuable. And you are the only person who can deliver the magic secret sauce that is your business. So if you're spending, let's say, 4 or 5 hours a week doing admin work, that's 4 or 5 hours a week that you are not out earning for your business. And so the price of like a VA who can whip that work off probably faster than you, because let's be honest, they're going to be doing it all day, every day, and that's going to be their expertise. And chances are it's not yours. So they're going to whip through it faster, and you're going to be able to reclaim that 4 or 5 hours because time is the only resource we can't get back. You're going to reclaim it and allocate it to income generating activities, and your business is going to grow faster. You're going to make more money by hiring that stuff out. And, when I point that out to clients and literally show them the numbers, if let's say you brought on 4 clients to cover that 4 hours, usually the sort of I either get the oh my gosh, like why didn't I think of this earlier, or like holy shit, this really is effective. And I never looked at it that way because we're not taught to.
Yeah, and I think if people are able to just see the numbers, like it's like a an actual physical thing. Like, some people are visual learners, some people are hands-on learners. Seeing numbers is hands-on. That's that's basically the comparison, because that's a result. It's saying, look, this is what happens when you do this. This is the result. So they're like, oh, okay, now I get it, because you've given them something that they can tangibly uh, put themselves against. Like, this is where you're at now. This is where you could be if you just did these extra steps to get to where you actually want to go. And being able to, again, going back to being able to trust you, and learning your methods and your ways, and saying, oh, okay, like she actually knows that that happens after the fact of me making these changes in my life. So I think that most people, they just need to see that. They just need to see what's going to happen, that result, because they probably haven't experienced it yet.
Not only that, but I think sometimes they feel like they need a little bit of permission. They need someone to tell them it's okay for you to ask for help. It's okay for you to seek out outside help to run your business. That doesn't make you bad or lazy or incompetent. It makes you a smart business owner. And giving them that permission sometimes is all it takes for someone to really see what they're capable of and what their business can be, is because they've spent usually when they're at that phase, they've spent so many hours and so much blood, sweat, and tears have gone into their business that they see it in a like way that we see our kids. Like they just love it and it's their baby and they want to nurture it. And it's like, okay, well, that's great. And you've done so much for it now, but now you're turning into a helicopter parent that's gonna have a neurotic kid. So like let's take a step back and let somebody else love your business. And giving them, like I said, giving them that permission, it's surprisingly effective.
Yeah, I was doing a podcast with this lady, and she does like coaching or mentoring people, and I was talking to her about, I think it was writing a book oh, it was her speech. She's going to do a, what, like the TED Talks or
Yep.
TEDx.
Oh yeah.
She's going to do a TEDx, and she needed to like narrow down her outline or something like that. And I was like, "Oh, have you ever used like Chat GPT?" She was like, "Oh, people have been talking about it, but I feel like that's cheating." I was like, "You're cheating yourself by not using it." I was like, "That's going to save you so much time and you're going to be able to get so much more done by using that. You're an idiot for not using it." And she was like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yes." I was like, "Please use that because you're going to realize how much like AI and all this technology is going to think." I'm glad I brought this up because it was a question I was going to ask you. How all that technology is going to help you. So my question was, how well do you need to keep up with these kind of things? So like technology is great for financial upkeep. We have stuff like Excel. Like when I first started learning about Excel, like what it could do, I was like, Excel is so much more powerful than what people really talk about. It is insane what Microsoft Excel can do for you. And then like QuickBooks is amazing. So how much education are you getting in to be able to help people with technology or softwares and stuff like that?
I think it's one of those things that in the right moment, the right tool can be game changer. And I think that when it comes to finances, a lot of people will go to there a little too quickly. They'll think that this tool, this technology is going to be the thing. It's going to fix me.
Hmm.
When a lot of finance is psychological and emotion based, a tool or technology isn't going to fix that. So I think that they're amazing. I think they're fabulous tools, and I use a lot of them in my business and in managing our finances, but I don't go there initially. But when people are ready, oh yeah, they are game changers. I personally I love QuickBooks. I use Excel a lot. You're right, it is a very powerful tool, and it is can just do so many amazing things. And the more I learn about it, the same thing, it just blows my mind how much it's capable of. And I love, all of these online trading platforms that are, starting to pop up. I think those are fantastic because it's just creating more accessibility into investing. And so absolutely. And I think that the um emerging idea of using AI as an investment tool is fascinating, and I'm really interested to see where that goes and how that progresses over time. And there's definitely a part of me that would like to take some of our more high risk money and give it a try just to see what happens. Um, but I think that at its core, the base work, the foundational work still has to be done before those tools can be effective.
Yeah, that makes sense because if you rely too much upon it, that then you're not going to be able to use it the way it's supposed to be used. Like a lot of people think just using the tool itself will just get you to where you're going. It's kind of I
It'll
tell
fix it.
yes, yeah. I tell people um AI like Chat GPT and stuff like that is like steroids. Like if you want to be big and muscular, you got to work out and you got to eat right. And the steroids helps you, look better and it builds that muscle. But if you just sit around and do nothing, you're not going to really see the results that you want to see. And that's
Mhm.
how the AI is just like that. It's like, hey, I can help you. I can get you started and all that stuff, but if you aren't doing what you need to be doing, it's only going to be so successful. And I tell people all the time, you can't expect A plus results from C plus effort. So you got to put in the effort that you want to put in if you want to get the results that you want to get out.
Absolutely. And I think it's true of any walk of life. It's I quite often liken finances to our physical health because we all kind of understand physical health. Somebody who sits on the couch and, doesn't eat right, doesn't get enough sleep, doesn't drink enough water. If you try and put them through a physical task like running a marathon, it's not going to go very well. They're probably going to crash and burn in the first mile. Whereas with our finances, somehow we expect if we don't pay attention to it, it's suddenly going to be there when we want it to be, and it's all going to function beautifully. And that's just not the case. You have to pay attention to it in order for it to be there for you. And it's that thing, these AI tools are so great, but they're not a fix to a problem. They're a tool to make what you're already doing more effective. But you have to do the thing in order for the tool to be effective.
So what's something that you feel like you have either gotten better at or just basically just learned from your experience with working from people? You're like, oh man, I started out this way. I had this ideology when I first started out, but now I've realized, I need to do things this way.
When I first started, I really thought that it was just about the strategy, that you just needed the right strategy, you just needed the right tools, and everybody you'd be fine. And that's just not the case. As the more I do this work, the more I realize that the psychology behind it, the mindset behind it is just as important. I'm not saying that strategy is not important because it absolutely is. It plays an equal role, but the mindset part of it has to be part of the equation. And it's not something that you can tick off a to-do list. You can say, you can't ever say, oh, I fixed my money mindset. I'm good, moving on. This is something that you're going to deal with for the rest of your life. You're going to always have to be working on it and addressing it and facing that in the mirror. If you want to truly be financially successful, you have to do both sides of the coin to really make progress. And, that's something that I have to feel like I have to learn over and over and over again. And I feel like everybody has to learn it over and over and over again. And you can never be finished. And as much as I would love to say, it's not the case, it is. And I just keep learning it in my practice. And I see it in all of my clients, every single one. I have never met a single client that does not have some financial hang up lurking in their subconscious. It's just a part of being human.
Yeah, I was doing a podcast with somebody and we were talking about I think it's Kevin Hart or some comedian was talking about they were at the gym and somebody came to the gym and they were just like this huge jacked person and he was like, "Hey man, what are you doing here? You won. Like you got it. You done." And the person I was having the podcast with, we were talking about how that's how some people view fitness or that's how they view their health is like as a finite goal. It's like, oh, I just need to get to this weight and this body fat percentage, look like this, have these abs, whatever, and I'm done. But it's like, no,
Mhm.
that's the start. Like, yeah, now you've
Yeah.
made it to that point. Now it's about maintaining. How can I continue to do that? What system are you going to do? What workouts? What diet plan are you going to continue to do to be able to maintain that level of accomplishment that you feel like you've reached? And a lot of people, that's what they struggle with is the consistency and the ideal of this isn't a finite race. This is
Yeah.
something,
There's no finish line.
yeah, I've got to continue to do this.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing with finances. A lot of people will think if I can just pay off my debt, I'll be good. If I can just save, 10K in my savings account, I'll be good. If I can just have 500,000 sitting in an investment account, I'll be good. That's not it. Those are amazing milestones. Absolutely. I'm not discrediting, those financial milestones. And I think that there's something that's you're striving towards, keep going for it. And when you get those accomplished, it feels phenomenal, but it's not the end. There's always something more, whether it's maintaining what you've done, because, using debt for an example, yes, you paid it off, but now what are you doing to prevent it from happening again? Or, having X number of dollars in the accounts, that's amazing. What are you doing to keep it there? How are you growing it? There is no finish line. And it
Absolutely.
can be both depressing and freeing at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, it's about that time. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. If you could just give everybody like your info as far as contact stuff, website, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. So you can find me most on Instagram at jenpaterson.biz, B-I-Z. And you can also check out my website, dollardivas.org. I've got a ton of great freebies. So for anybody who is in the entrepreneurial space, I offer a free money power hour every Friday morning where I'm available on Zoom. You can come in, ask questions, or just have someone to be accountable to so you get your shit done. That is what I do Friday mornings. So come and join me. And you can also check out all my other freebies and my programs. Again, that's dollardivas.org.
Awesome. Thank you so much for spreading your knowledge and wisdom on finances and being able to just, help people understand like where they're at, what they need to do to make sure that they can manage their lives properly. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate your time.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for everybody for tuning in. See you next time.